this is going to sound fucking crazy. I think this scene here is Tim Allen's best dramatic acting in anything I've ever seen.
Legit.
He definitely doesn't cross that line very often. So,
No, he doesn't.
yeah.
But
I
here
didn't think
was
he
like,
had the
Jesus.
ability to make me tear up, and he did it.
Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, a show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about Shifting Gears. Shifting Gears is expected to have 10 episodes by the end of its first season on ABC. Here we're talking about episode 1, which was called Restoration, originally airing January 8th, 2025. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me, as always, the boys, most of them, Joe, Ferg, and Nick. No Gordo this week. What's going on, guys?
Hey, yo.
Hey.
Plunk, plunk, plunk. Sit down. You're done. A lot of shade at bass players in this episode.
Yeah,
Gordo's not on this one, and Gordo was primarily a bass player.
I think that's why he decided.
That's why
to take
he's
his
not
week
here.
I would say that's why, but he definitely didn't watch it.
Gordo, who plays bass and loves mocktails, missed this episode.
Yeah.
off. So, yeah, Shifting Gears. This is Tim Allen's third sitcom, second one we're covering. This is the newer one. Just came out. We're recording in February. This is only a month old. This episode here, him and Kat Dennings starring in. I remember first hearing about it and being like, just the thought of, oh, Tim Allen. Well, it's not like it's funny. He's had a sitcom for years that like I just kind of forget exists sometimes.
Because it's not great.
I really liked it.
I haven't seen it.
We'll cover it soon.
We watched all of it. We watched all of it in its run, and then we were on vacation once, and we stayed in a hotel right over the Canadian border on the way to and the way back, and the only thing they had on the TV on like terrestrial Canadian cable both times was Last Man Standing. So we watched like 9 episodes that week too.
I always mix up the names of that one with Man with the Plan, the one with Matt LeBlanc.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's great,
the names
too.
I mix up all the time. But another show we need to do. And then Kat Dennings obviously had a really long run on Two Broke Girls, a show that we're going to do eventually.
No.
I like Kat Dennings. I hate Two Broke Girls. Man, that is.
Yeah, Two Broke Girls is not really for me.
I
And then-
hate Kat Dennings. I think she ruined this show.
We'll get into it.
It's solely on her hands, too.
I am a fan of Kat Dennings. She did some of the Disney Marvel stuff. What was it? The
Oh, yeah. She was in Thor.
WandaVision she was on.
Yeah, Thor. She was in WandaVision. I forget her character's name.
Because she's so forgettable.
I don't think she's forgettable, and she likes to party hard because she's married to Andrew WK.
I know.
Oh, yeah, I
Really?
forgot about
I didn't
that.
know that.
Yeah, it's a weird pairing, right?
When I remember first hearing going, what? And then going, nah, that makes sense.
I think the first time I ever saw her was in the 40-Year-Old Virgin. She was the daughter.
Yeah, definitely.
That was one of her first, yeah.
My daughter will make the like high pitched scream sometimes, and I always say, "Sounds like a tea kettle," which is like Steve Carell's funniest line in that movie.
So IMDb currently has this as a 6.1. Rotten Tomatoes, 50% critic, 62% audience. And as of right now, if you want to watch Shifting Gears, it's on ABC Weekly, but after it's live aired, it goes on to Hulu. So if you want to catch up on that show, go to Hulu and you can watch along with us. Yeah, this is so like I said, Tim Allen's third show, not to be confused with his $1 billion anti-woke sitcom that I keep reading that he signed on to do.
Oh, God, what?
I think that whole thing was just people trolling, right? Like Roseanne was going to be in it
There's
too.
all these like
It pops up every couple months on
if you go on
Facebook.
like Facebook or like Twitter, there's always ads saying that like Tim Allen signs $1.8 billion for new anti-woke sitcom.
Like a Newsmax original or whatever.
and then it's always a million people who just don't do anything. Like, good, God bless America.
It's about damn time.
Yeah.
It's worth it popping up just for the comments.
Yeah.
That's so much more entertaining than that show could ever
There's
be.
also like the Roseanne's new talk show has 1.7 billion viewers in its first week. They're like, good, fuck the Carters. Like, also the entire world watched.
I always get Roseanne is replacing Sunny Hostin on The View.
Yeah.
It's like in the episode of The Office where Daryl makes the the resume. It's like 1.5 billion units. He's like, what are units, Daryl? He's like, pieces of paper. It's like, how could that many people watch one TV show?
So I'm surprised you never see them. They pop up constantly. It's always Tim Allen or Roseanne. Not that, I mean, listen, I don't want to get into it. Tim Allen, very outspoken about a lot of his beliefs. He definitely injects it into this show, and we'll get into it. But you have the Kat Dennings character that's a little bit more counterpart, where I feel like in Last Man Standing, there was like less of that. It was just more
why do we need it at all is my question.
I feel like he writes it in. He's like,
of course he does, yes.
You're going to let me speak my piece.
I think it's smart. Honestly, I think it's smart because this is why he's never going to do like the quote unquote $1 billion woke thing, because he knows the money is in the Odd Couple thing. Like, he's going to have his views, and he's going to have the other people who have an equal say and have their views, and the fight of it
I think in a show like
causes...
this where there's more balance and you can show both, I mean, I think that's fine. Because it doesn't isolate like your listeners as much. When you have a show that's heavily skewed one way or the other, I think you are by default cutting your listener base in half. When you have like an Odd Couple situation, you can team up with one, whether you team up with her or him, and that's fine, and everyone can be engaged, and that works.
My problem is the fact that, like, Joe, you specifically are not somebody who loves pop culture references because it timestamps a show. And that's what these things do, too. When you bring up these hot button issues that like are very relevant right now, but probably won't be a big deal, 8 years from now, you're dating the show with something that's totally unnecessary. You're just poking for the sake of poking, and it's annoying. And I hate that specifically Tim Allen does it, because I love Tim Allen. Let me watch a show with you in it without you having to put it in there. I want to watch these sitcoms to escape shit like that.
I mean, and listen.
Well, right now, especially, though, it's a much more charged political climate. But I think that people aren't going to go back to this show and rewatch it the way that people still will 20 years from now rewatch all of Home Improvement.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think that speaks more to...
I don't take it like that. I take it like they said, like an Odd Couple pairing. He's the complete opposite of his daughter.
Yeah, so that's why I think here it's not as bad as like how his last show may have come up. And it's funny. I mean, listen, and I don't want to get too deep into it because I want to talk about the show itself. And we the same. Like, there's a reason we don't talk political stuff. And I mean, this is probably the most politically driven episode we've come out with now in over 200 episodes, because we're talking about this for like 3 minutes. So like, yeah, listen, I think all that stuff's supposed to be escape. Nick, I think you have good points there where like just leave it out entirely. But I do think that in this case, they are just trying to not much different than, All in the Family. Sometimes there is that the clashing of two worlds, it creates comedy. So I think that's more of what this was.
I get that, like, create the dichotomy, right? But this is a lazy way to it. This is like it's so easy to do that, and it's annoying. And I don't know. I feel like it doesn't even matter what side you're on. I feel like this is annoying. It really, really bugs me. I can't stand it.
To me, that doesn't bug me the same way that like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's about Instagram in it, right? Like, that's what bothers me.
Well, that's you. That's a you.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. To me, I feel the same way.
And I feel the same way. That's why I think Last Man Standing did the same thing too, where like the entire show is about him doing vlogs, right? Where like that is an already outdated thing, and that show's only been off the air for X amount of time. Whereas like the political talk, I feel like people are going to always argue about politics. That's never, ever going to go away. But to be like, what did you use for hashtag is going to be like, oh, fuck me in 5 years,
Also, I don't think there was that much of that in this. There was a little bit, and it was from the kids.
It was very brief.
Yeah, it was pretty brief.
Guys, I think we can all agree, though, the only real crime that this show committed was Seann William Scott's fake tattoos, right?
I was wondering if they were fake.
Are they fake?
I'm not sure.
Those have to be fake. There's no way he has those tattoos.
I'm not sure. That's all I'm saying.
My brain was so sure they were fake, I didn't even look it up when I was doing my notes.
They have to be fake.
They are real.
No.
They are real?
Yeah.
Well, Joe, take it back.
I'm sorry, Seann William Scott has real bad tattoos. I don't know what you want me to say. And I say that as a person covered in bad, stupid tattoos. I'm right there with him.
I'm looking at a picture of him right now.
Wait, isn't this tattoo like a...
Ooh, and he's a fellow violent gentleman wearer.
I know it's not that hard to cover them up, but like I always get surprised when celebrities get them because they're constantly acting in roles with like that shows, oh, that's this actor. And
Yeah, it gets tricky. You know what I mean? Like, depending on what role you're playing. Here, he's like a mechanic. So it's like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a big
But,
deal.
yeah, but aren't these tattoos like Samoan? Like,
I don't know. I'm not gonna like assume because I don't know.
these look like they're very specific tattoos to
They do look like that, yeah.
I don't think that he is.
I don't know anything about his background or why he got them or anything like that. So, and I like Seann William Scott, so I'm not gonna.
I love Seann William Scott. I'm not judging. I just don't know if you can have
What?
that tattoo.
What happened to Seann William Scott? Because he went from being in like all of these, American Pie style movies, and like he was in like The Rock's, like one of his first movies, which
The Rundown.
The Rundown, yeah. He's been, and then he just like fell off the face of the earth.
Well, he did The Goon, which is hilarious, and they did The Goon 2, which was not hilarious.
Yeah, The Goon has a sequel too. But I was gonna say he's been doing stuff. I just think more low key.
just fingers crossed for another American Pie.
No, but I think we all tend to think too that like every person who is ever like uber famous wants to be that
That's
famous
true,
forever. Like you had a bunch of smash hits, probably made a fuck ton of money between that. Even like Dude, Where's My Car made a ton of money, so like.
And that movie is fucking amazing.
Plus, he got to be in Role Models, which is fantastic.
Also, he get to say you got a fucking dart in your neck, which is so
There's a
fucking
point where you
funny.
might go like, you know what, like I can live like a pretty comfortable life, just do the roles I want to do, like, if a good gig comes up.
Because you see somebody disappear for a while, and then you see them in this, and you're like, are you like, did you start from the beginning? Like, what's happening here?
There are certain movies. Imagine anybody who's in like Office Space, 40-year-old Virgin, I guess definitely still has it. Any of the American Pie movies, they sold so many DVDs.
Yeah.
That these people were making so much
that was
residual
back
money.
when they still made the money, yeah.
Right. So I imagine like if you were in a movie like that then and you were just smart about your money, you could have put a ton of money away.
Yeah.
I think we should actually get into the show real quick. Actually, one tidbit I want to mention before, I was trying to do notes. There's not a lot of information. Obviously, the show is so new. Tim Allen and Kat Dennings have the same birthday.
Oh, that's sweet.
That's interesting.
June 13th. Different years, obviously.
As I say, different show, same casting, that they're married. And the kids aren't his grandkids, they're his kids. And he's like, what do I do? I'm an old man dad. I think that's a better show.
Tim Allen, 1953. Kat Dennings, like myself and Nick, 1986.
Oh, wow. She was born legit 6 days before me then.
Yeah, I got like 2 weeks on her. So, but yeah, to get right into the episode, we see like this car restoration shop, and it's the garage of it, and there's two guys sitting there, Gabriel, which is Seann William Scott's character, and Ed, played by Daryl Mitchell, who would be a former co-star of Tim Allen's in was it Galaxy Quest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's also Chill in House Party 1 and 2.
Mm.
The House Party movies come up a weird amount in this show.
Well, I've said this before. It is to this day, if my mom is flicking channels and I'm at work or something and House Party's on, she's like, hey, House Party 2's on, just so you know. Like, listen, I love those movies as a kid. Like, I'm not obsessed with the House Party movies, but it's one of those things.
So was that the pilot guy in Galaxy Quest? Is that who he
I haven't
was?
seen Galaxy Quest in so
Yeah,
long.
I can't remember who he was in it.
Because he wasn't in a wheelchair in that. So is he faking being in a wheelchair in this?
I don't think he needs it in real life. I think it's
He
just
does.
the character. Oh, does he?
Yeah, he got into a motorcycle accident in the early 2000s.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's genuinely in a wheelchair.
Oh, well, now I know. Anyways, yeah, so he plays Ed. So Gabriel and Ed are standing there, and you have Gabriel saying, damn, you're looking good. Although I've loved all this time that we've been spending together. Now I'm ready to take it to the next level. And then you have Ed kicking with the, are you talking to this car again? And then, and Gabriel's talking to a car that he's in love with. And they're going over like, she's got a name, it's Victoria. He's like, I think she looks more like a Felicia.
Was it? You see that trunk? She's a Felicia, and you know it.
Yeah.
Ed's going, let's get back to work. I don't want to mess up Matt's good mood. He hasn't gone on one of his usual rants yet. And then you get I'm standing right here. And like Tim Allen's character, Matt, who's like the guy who runs this garage is, all but like 10 feet away. He has an open office, and you get that like round of applause from the audience. So I'm like, I guess this is live studio.
good, because I feel like a live studio audience works for when you have an established sitcom guy. Like, it's worth the pops, you know.
And then he instantly like gets right into the, let me guess, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. He's like, we don't even make handbaskets in the US anymore. And he's like getting into all this stuff. And I'm like, and my first impression was like, okay, we got another one of these shows.
Yep.
I didn't look up. I wonder how much basket weaving is actually done in the United States these days. That's an odd job to have.
He's also getting into celebrities that use diabetes medicine to lose weight. He's like, you want to lose weight? It's simple. This hole is bigger than this hole, pointing to his mouth and his butt. I didn't know how that works, though. What are you trying to say? Because the mouth hole is bigger, so in turn,
less can come out of the butthole.
Eat the amount of food that would come out of your butthole. Eat butthole-sized foods.
I think he's saying poop more than you eat, but very confusing.
But yeah, I mean, he's starting to go to this like rant about modern day society, and I was getting flashbacks to his last sitcom a little bit. I'm like, oh, I don't want this to be like too much of like your worldly opinion. But right around this time is we start hearing music playing and like an engine revving, and you hear, is that my GTO? I built that thing 15 years ago, and then somebody stole it. And then it rolls into the garage, and Kat Dennings, who plays Riley, gets out of the car. She's like, hi, Dad. Like, there's the thief.
If you're going to steal a car to go on a joyride, though, that's a pretty good one to take.
Well, yeah. It's like, well, the joyride ends here, and I decided it's time for me to return it. He's, like, ready to argue. We find out, like, throughout the episode, they don't have a great relationship. He's like, you got a lot of nerve combat, and then right as that happens, her two kids, his grandkids, come running out. It's like, oh, say hey to Grandpa, which cuts off that conversation. She has two kids, like, looks like one is, well, we know one is learning to drive, so he's about 16, and then the girl's probably, what would you say, like 10, 11-ish?
Yeah, I'd say somewhere between like 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
The older two, Maxwell, Simkins, he was like fresh off that Mighty Duck show.
Yeah.
That was just on Disney Plus, which I thought.
And my God, did he grow?
Yeah. He reminds me of like, sort of like Sean Astin, almost like a young Sean Astin.
Yeah, they have that chubby, young, always young-looking face.
Yeah. Yep.
Is he digging a pool in the backyard with Pauly Shore?
I gotta watch that.
Don't joke. There's rumors of a sequel coming out.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'm okay with that, only if Encino Man is played by Brendan Fraser in the whale makeup and costume. He's like, oh God, what happened? This is what America does to you in 30 years.
Yeah, he gets out and he's like, oh, hey, Pops. Like, this is a very tense garage. It's like, well, technically it's a restomod shop?
Restomod.
Restomod? So is that
Resto?
Restomod? Is that a restoration? Yeah, is that the same as just restoration shop?
This is a weird thing. I have never been a car guy, but I love car shows, so I know all about this. I always watch like Rust Valley, whatever. It's like on a History Channel and stuff. Resto mods are, it's when you take like an old car and you refurbish it, but you put like new stuff in it too.
Oh, like Pimp My Ride.
Yeah, sort of like Pimp My Ride, but like
we
more
heard you
like...
like to make cookies, so we put an oven in the trunk.
Yeah, instead of an easy bake oven in the back of your 68 Mustang, they like give you better brakes and like a good radio and seatbelts. It's like a weird like new car, old car thing.
Well, that's significantly less fun.
I mean, I'm sure you could still put an easy bake oven in the back of the car if you wanted.
He's like, yeah, so he says, technically it's a Restomod shop. He's like, well, a very tense one. And we get into the intro. Intro is very short. It's the overhead view of the car, and you see like the 4 family members all getting in, and then it drives off. And as it drives off, from underneath the car, we reveal the name of the show, Shifting Gears. Very entourage-y. The end of the Entourage theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I didn't think about that, but it is.
That's also a show that comes up on this podcast all the fucking time. You guys watched so much Entourage.
Entourage.
I love Entourage.
Well, fans constantly ask if we can cover it, and the answer is no, because it is not a sitcom.
It's not a sitcom, and the episodes are too long. So,
No, they're only half-hour episodes.
are they half hour? Why does it felt like they were long?
I watched a lot with you guys at the time because you'd always have it on, and those episodes definitely felt like an hour to me then.
I don't know. You know what's funny? How I found out about Entourage was back when you used to watch like videos on demand all the time. That was like the super popular thing to do on like Comcast.
Oh yeah.
Was it the wine shop one?
They did, yeah. It was like DDP, like Jimmy Snuka, Jake the Snake, and like someone else like played the 4 people from Entourage and recreated a scene.
Then Jimmy Snuka murdered a lady, and Vince McMahon got him off of it.
Fucking Captain Fun all the time. But yeah, no. So
Snuka doesn't get away. He didn't die and get away with it.
I remember watching that and then being like, well, what's the actual show? And then starting to watch the show from there. Yeah, no, intro's fine. Doesn't, again, we've talked about this a billion times. This is a show that probably could get away with the more classic intro, but they don't have one. And I think it's fine.
I like this because I feel like they could have gone with a car song and that would have been like too much, Like I feel like Born to Be Wild or something would have been like just a step too far.
Right.
Yeah. Now, next scene, we see Riley in the living room of her dad's house right as he's like walking in from work. And like he's walking in and she goes, oh, I see you still keep your key under the Reagan gnome.
I did look up and you cannot find any Ronald Reagan gnomes, unfortunately. I would have bought one for all of us, but they do not exist.
Don't forget, Ferg has a terrifying fear of gnomes.
I'm better.
But you have a love of Ronald Reagan, so I feel like it really counteract each other.
Whew.
Well, Ferg, don't be scared of me.
That was a great impression.
Thank you. I have so few talents that are worth anything.
So he walks in and he's asking, hey, why are my grandkids in the car? And she's like, I told them to wait there so we can catch up loudly. Also to call the cops if necessary.
I thought so we can catch up loudly was a very funny line.
I already know this is going to be just me. She sounds like she's reading. She is not emoting at all. It feels like a totally phoned in performance. Every word out of her mouth is just, well, I know I did this.
Oh, so all of her performances.
I would say she has a pretty...
I cannot stand her.
She has a pretty specific cadence. And I don't think it's
a lack of cadence is what it is. It's just there's nothing there. It's like she's reading from the script, but the script isn't in her hand. It's insufferable. I hate it so much.
Nick, you haven't mentioned yet. Do you like Kat Dennings?
I can't stand her. Cannot stand her.
He prefers dog Fennings.
So they're Jesus. They're having a conversation. And he's like, what are you here for? Is like the car? Does it need to get fixed? She's like, no, actually, the car's like the one thing that's solid. He's like, that's because I make stuff that's built to last. He's like, except our relationship. And he's saying like, well, that one was on you. And they keep talking, and this whole conversation in general, they're going back and forth for quite a while. This whole scene is basically trying to give you all the exposition you need to get you through the rest of the series.
Yeah, right now you learn the mother died and they're estranged, and the mother was what was keeping them together.
She ran off when she was 18, got pregnant with some musician. Like, yeah, everything's...
Not a musician, a bass player.
Yeah, this is where we get his hatred of bass players, apparently. Plunk, plunk, plunk.
Hey, look, playing bass well is very hard.
I was going to say, Joe, Gordo's not here, but you played bass for a long time in a band.
Yeah.
But do you consider yourself a bassist?
No, I consider myself a guitar player.
But you slap at a bass, man.
I do slap at a bass, man. I will say I have two instruments next to my desk, though. I have a guitar and a bass, and I do, depending on the moment, I'll pick one up if I have free time, and sometimes pick the bass up and still play it.
Just out of curiosity, like, in that time, because you spent so long being, like, primarily a bass player in that time of your life, did you feel more, like, connected to that instrument at that time, or did you always just feel like I'm a guitar player who's playing bass?
1,000%. I didn't really feel like I could even play guitar enough to play guitar in a band until probably the next band I was in. And at that point, I wasn't even sure. That was a band where it was like, hey, we're starting a band and we're going to get like a lead guitar player so you can play rhythm and someone who can sing, because you're not great at either of those things. And then one day they were like, you're doing both. And I was like, well, here we go. And I'm still not very good at either, but I'm enough that I've been in bands ever since playing guitar. I'll probably never be in a band I sing in again, though.
And that band was U2.
Rattle and hum, baby. Rattle and hum.
That's the real reason Joe hates them so much.
They kicked me out before the album on the iPod. I could have been so fucking rich.
There's been some publications. I think Joe is regarded as Maine's Eddie Money.
You know how much I love Eddie Money, so I'm totally okay with that.
I call him Freddie Franks.
My German counterpart. That's my German Eddie Money cover band. Take das home tonight.
Here we're also getting the, he's asking like, oh, and where is James, by the way, the bass player? And she's like, we're getting a divorce. she's saying how she's broke and she has nowhere else to go and they need a place to stay. And she was hoping that maybe they could stay at his house while she saves some money. And I'm thinking, like, I get that TV purposes, right? We have to see this all unfold. But, like, would you drive all the way to where he's at to dump on, like, hey, while I'm in your house, I need a place to stay? Like, the kids are already packed up? Or would you call, be like, hey, Dad, I know it's been a while, but we need to talk?
In person and with the kids, he can't say no.
Yeah.
But there's also the weirdness, too, where, like, you find out later on, which I thought was kind of a surprising tell, where he's like, I have a relationship with the grandkids because of your mother. So he's in contact with the grandkids. They have, like, a good relationship. They could have been like, hey, Grandpa, shit's fucking bad. Like, Dad just ran off with some girl. Like, can we stay? And he would have said yes to the kids.
It's not, and I don't know, like, I don't know how long ago the mother died. It sounds like...
I was going to ask that.
I was getting the vibe that, like, it wasn't super recently, but it wasn't, like, forever ago. You know what I mean? I feel like we're talking, like, a year or something like that. That's kind of how it feels.
I feel like, and this isn't to be weird, but, like, the flour would have started falling off more.
Well, sure. Yeah, things like that.
With time, if it wasn't super recent. You know what I mean? Like, the flour sifter...
But even then, it's like, it's TV. But
Sure.
just generally speaking, by the kind of the vibes I'm getting through a lot of this and where they are in, like, the grieving process too. But yeah, no, we find out, like, she was like the glue, right? She was the reason that even those two ever had a relationship when she was younger and did live with them. And she's the reason that he has a relationship with his grandkids now because of that link. And she's not here anymore. And we also find out during this conversation that, like, when she did die, Riley didn't even talk to her father at the funeral. She's like, yes, I did. He's like, no, you basically, like, gave me a head nod and stayed with, in your corner.
That said, though, we've all been to plenty of funerals. It's a nightmare situation. I don't think anyone's ever been to one they enjoyed, right? Like, sometimes you see people there and they're just grieving in their own way, and they just, like, you never engage with somebody you feel like that doesn't want to be engaged with at a funeral.
Yeah, but this is a small family. You know what I mean? This is
Sure.
like your mother died, and it's you and your father talking. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many immediates there in that moment. That's usually when you put things aside for at least the
When you
day.
The
Suck it
moment.
up.
Yeah.
Right.
But that does give us a lot to show us, like, where this relationship is. It's not good between the two of them.
You get the idea then that he's genuinely hurt from the funeral part.
Yeah.
He's all right with them fighting, but that hurt him.
But with all that in mind, because of his grandkids and because at the end of the day, he's a good dude, he does agree to, like, let them stay.
And also, he's his dad. He loves her, and you clearly can tell he has missed her, and he loves the grandkids. Like, I think he's a guy living in an empty house too. That's got to be weird. You know what I mean? When you're used to having your house full of people forever, all of a sudden, like, imagine
For sure, yeah.
just living alone. All of a sudden, you'd be like, "Whoa, this is so weird."
I do like that when she's kind of going over everything and how, her husband was out on the road as a musician and kind of doing everything that might come along with that, basically insinuating that he was cheating on her.
That's how you know he's a good bass player, by the way, because nobody wants to sleep with the bass player. He must have been really good.
So when she's giving that whole speech and just talking about, like, between that and, like, what mom's passing, and she's just, like, trying to just, like, what am I doing with my life? And, she's like, I'm just, I'm really tired and I need your help, Dad. And this is like, they're about to bond. They're sitting on the couch together, and you have that moment where Matt's holding his, like, hand out, like he wants to, like, console her, but he doesn't quite know how to go about it. So he, like, just basically, like, pats her boot. Like, his hand's, like, waving around. He doesn't know, like, he kind of wants to put it around her, but he doesn't feel like they have that closeness.
I feel like you never grabbed the shoe, though. The shoe's dirty. Grab the ankle.
Yeah. Well, he didn't, like, not, like, under the shoe, not the rubber part.
Still, I feel like shoes. I don't know. I feel like if food fell on my shoe, on the top of my shoe, I'd still be like, I don't know. It's my shoe. It's been in a bathroom at a bar. You know what I mean? Like the shoe is gross.
Yeah, there's no good part of a shoe, yeah.
Yeah, that scene happens. Then we kind of flash to, like, later on. And I think it's, like, what is it, the next morning or something? And the two kids are in the dining room and they're sitting there and the TV's on and they're watching, like, the news. And, like, Matt's, like, hanging out with them. You see her in the background on the phone. He's going on another rant about the news. He's like, this is why I hate the news. Like one person tells you the news, and then the other 3 people tell you how you're supposed to feel about the news. Like, and I actually say solid.
I laughed so hard because I watch the news too, and he says hate watch later, and I feel like I hate watch the news too. I've cut back a lot in the past few months, but I always had that same thing where it's like, why does it cut to 3 more people telling me what the news just said? Like that seems like a complete.
I thought it was a super smart line. It's like something I never really thought about.
Yeah, the news is weird, especially now too, because most news shows are just panels, right? So it's just like, here's a whole group of people tell you about this one thing that's happening. I know we're never going to get back to like Walter Cronkite gives you the news and everybody trusts it. Like that's gone, but like it's hard to like throw the news on at like 10 p.m. when like the shows are on any channel because it's just people arguing loudly.
It's one of those things too where I think a lot of those like panel news discussion shows where like all news networks for the most part seem to be skewed one way or the other. And then it just becomes like this long conversation of like a heavily biased opinion. It's like, just give me the facts. I don't want to how you feel about it or whatever. It's just, it gets to be too much. There's no like good solid like in the middle news around here at least. So I don't like those shows.
There's money to be made by a news network that was just like, we're just gonna literally read you facts of things that happened and then cut to commercials of Frank Thomas. I would watch that channel all fucking day.
I just want bullet points.
Yeah, like, oh, I want to know what's happening when my day starts. That's all I want. I want to know, like, the weather, and I want to know any big stories that happened, but I don't want anybody telling me their thoughts about it.
Right around there is when Riley walks back in from the porch. She just got off the phone with her Uncle Sammy, and she was saying, oh, he said, hey, love you guys, and also, run, get out now. What are you doing? Are you insane? Do we think that Uncle Sammy is Mom's brother or Matt's brother?
I read it as her brother.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, like Uncle Sammy is her brother, and he was saying
the
that
kid's
to
uncle.
the
That
kids,
makes sense.
yeah.
I wasn't thinking about it that way because they do reference a brother earlier, and I was wondering, is the brother still alive? Because the way they talked about him later in the episodes, that makes sense now.
Is he also estranged? Like, I'm so confused.
I was gonna say, I've watched the first 4 episodes of this show, I think, because we watched it as it was going on. I don't think they bring him up, but then I was like, is he in the army or something? Like, Uncle Sam is also like a little on the nose too, if you're going for like rah-rah America stuff, so...
This whole time I was thinking like she was talking to her uncle and not thinking about the kid's uncle. So that does make a lot more sense now because we do know later on it's mentioned that she has a brother, but it's very lightly mentioned.
Now I'm trying to think, did they mention where he is? Because you find out that Seann William Scott's his best friend.
That's why, yeah.
I don't think they mention it, no.
We never find out where he's at, no.
And then you just gotta like question why didn't they go stay with him?
That makes me feel even more though with the Uncle Sam thing that he's like deployed or something, like he's a military
It's
guy.
very possible. She's also saying, oh, by the way, like, just so you know, like, we don't do screen time while we eat. He's like, well, this is my house, so now we do. Which is going to be like a forever back and forth between the two.
You know what? I side with him because she's living with him right now. He's doing her a favor. Don't come in and stop making rules.
Not day one, at least. Like, oh, by the way, we do this and that.
I understand it with, like, her kids. She can make the rules, but she's telling him, like, he can't watch the news, which I assume he does every morning.
Right.
Are you guys eat and watch TV people, or are you eat and no screen people?
Always TV, yep.
Always TV.
Not always, actually. It depends. Like, if we make, like, a nice dinner, and it's, like, a sit-down and, like, enjoy
Sunday
this
dinner
meal,
type of thing,
then
yeah.
not necessarily. You don't need TV for that. You can kind of just enjoy each other in the meal. But, if it's just, like tonight, we got some Chinese food, and according to Jim, was on the TV in the kitchen. So, like, it's just, like...
That sounds like the best meal ever. I'm not going to lie to you. That sounds fucking amazing.
It's like, I'm not married. I don't have kids. So, like, for me, it's like I'm on the run. My dinner, even if I'm home, like, I might be in the living room, and if so, the TV might be on, or I'm like just in the kitchen, like just standing over like the island and eating, which is kind of how I have most of my dinners. And if that's the case, like I'll have my phone on, but even then it's not often a video. Like I listen to podcasts so much where I'll just be playing a podcast, listening to it while I'm eating, and maybe just
That's
like
the same difference though. It doesn't have to be watching.
Oh, it's still
that you're being
it's screen
entertained.
time. That's why I think it's generalized as screen time. But yeah, no, but that's how I kind of.
I think alone is different though. Like I think if you like go home, you make yourself like a 3-course meal by yourself, and you sit down at a table like Kevin McAllister before the bandits come in the house.
Yeah.
Like that's fucking weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're alone, that's different. I mean, we were always screen people. My parents, same thing, right? If it was a big meal, obviously you didn't, but like dinner in front of the TV, always in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I always too. But ever since we had the kid, it's like, oh, we all eat in the dining room and we put music on. And there is something to be said that's very nice too. But sometimes I'm just like, I just want to sit on the couch. I had the longest day of work ever. And I just want to put on some shitty show.
Growing up, my living room and my dining room were next to each other. And we definitely, I feel like the TV was always kind of like on while we had dinner, but it also wasn't like a position where anyone could really watch it. So it didn't matter. Yeah, no one could really see what was on. It was just background noise, if anything.
I always had a kitchen TV. It was
We did too,
it was not
growing
one
up,
in the actually right now my kitchen and dining room are pretty much attached, and there's a mounted TV, like a small, it's not a fucking 50-inch TV, it's like probably like a 20-inch TV mounted in between the two, and it like swivels. So if like you're cooking, you can swivel it towards the kitchen. If you're sitting down to eat, you can have it face the table. So I couldn't live without it at this point though. Like I love it. The kitchen TV is like my like, I don't know. It's just it brings me back to being younger almost for some reason.
I'm curious, Joe, like now, like as your daughter will get older, how you will handle the screen time thing, because I'll say that even just as an uncle, and Fur can attest, with his son, and you'll see like the whole, like you'll want to limit screen time, and then you'll see how much of a lifesaver it is. Like the second it's on, you go, whoo.
Yep.
So
I've seen it with everybody, and I've always been very open to that. I'm like, look, I just think you do as much as you can, but you can't fight. Sometimes it needs to happen.
No. It's important to just control the content. Like you're not going to limit the time so much. Just make sure they're not watching dumb shit. Like have it be partially educational, like, but there's so much dumb shit out there.
It's funny. So if we have the TV on, like we're all like hanging out in the living room playing, it's usually music. But if we have the TV on, we'll put on like the PBS app. We'll put on old Sesame Street episodes, stuff that not old, but like the ones from like the early 2000s where like they're singing a lot or whatever, and like that's always good. But Sunday mornings, like the sort of arrangement we have is like my wife will either go out and do something in the morning, or she'll sleep in. I'll take over with the baby, and that's my one time of the week where I get to watch anything I want because she's still so little it doesn't matter. So it's just like my wife will come down and like in the middle of like Death Wish 4, and I'm like, she doesn't know what's happening right now, but like you don't want to watch this.
Yeah.
We watched the entirety of like the 2.5-hour Manchurian Candidate the other day, and I was like, do you believe this? Do you believe this? This is how they're gonna kill the president? Like there's no response. There's not a good audience with you.
How many times, your daughter's how old now?
She's 11 months.
11 months. How many times has she seen Waiting for Guffman?
A few. You know, the best thing is that Christopher Guest's character in that like will pull her attention. That'll be in the background, and he'll be like, "You're bastard people," and she'll be like, "Oh, I'm so happy. It's clearly my child."
I can't. Well, coming up on a year already. Wow, time flies.
Yeah, it's weird. We're planning her birthday party, and that's a weird feeling. Her first birthday party. Invites you guys.
Get the giraffe.
I wanted to have the Mrs. Doubtfire party where I got like the whole zoo inside the house and just kids rapping and dancing, standing on my coffee table, but I was vetoed quickly out of that.
So, anyways, to reel us back in for a second, Riley's talking about all the stuff that she needs to get done, needs to get the kids enrolled in school, find a job, and Matt's like, "Hey, maybe it's not too late for you to go back to college." It's like, "Well, by the way, so I got a bachelor's degree online. Graduated top of my kitchen."
Waka, waka, waka.
Boo. Boo that joke.
And
that was not a good joke.
No, not a good joke at all.
Shouldn't his character with his political sidings be like, college is a scam?
Well, he should definitely be like, online college is a scam. Like, oh, the University of Phoenix, you're going to rise from the ashes of not having a job.
Well, his big thing is he wants her to be a lawyer. He's like, you could go to law school. Like, that was always your dream. And she's like, no, that was your dream. Which, I mean, I think we've all seen. I remember too, like, the argument is, well, you're so good at arguing and you love to argue. Like, you're a natural lawyer. The amount of times I was told that by relatives and friends
Teachers.
And family, like, like, you love to argue, you'd be a great lawyer. It's like, well, that requires school, and I wasn't good at the school stuff.
Prosecutor Jason, your client has been accused of touching multiple children. Would you like to argue on his behalf? Like, that's a terrible job. I don't want this argument.
Yeah.
No, wouldn't he be the defendant?
You don't know?
Well, you don't know. That's the thing. that is a weird thing about being a lawyer too, right? Like you take the case and there are times where like, hey, the person I'm defending is a giant
bad.
sack of shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like somebody defended Bill Cosby.
yeah. Well, think like, I mean,
just a nice old man in a sweater. He didn't know what he was doing.
every trial ever, right? For every rape, every murder, every terrible
somebody
thing,
has to be.
there's someone defending you who's trying to make it so you don't go to jail. Like it is a weird headspace to be in.
Not to bring him up all the time, but there is a new Netflix documentary, and whenever there's something new, I get pulled back into him. But O.J. Simpson,
more O.J.,
there was
yeah.
7 high-powered lawyers being like, "This fucking guy did it, and we gotta fucking lie to these people." I mean, Johnny Cochran has come out and said, "Don't take your arthritis medicine for like 3 or 4 days, because then the glove won't fit you." He literally was like, that murder glove you wore to murder those 2 people? If you do this, people won't think you murdered those 2 people. That's a bad man. That's the job. It's so fucking weird.
I know.
And that's why the world hates lawyers.
And O.J. Simpson.
Matt's talking to his granddaughter, Georgia. He's saying, hey, last time we talked, you saw that Barbie movie. You said you're going to tear down the patriarchy, right? She's like, that's old news. My dream now is to become a billionaire, like Lori from Shark Tank. She travels by helicopter.
Man, I've been sucked into Shark Tank.
Shark Tank is one of those
Yeah.
shows I don't watch like on purpose, but if it's ever on, like I'll stop at it.
Something about that show I just don't love. I don't know why.
What always throws me off on that one is they'll be like, they have the guest sharks. And it's like, this is Greg Kindbar. One day he was like, if I put nuts and chocolate in a different variation, I'll be a billionaire. And you're like, how did that happen? And now you have enough money to give other people millions of dollars? And I love Kindbar. I'm not knocking the guy. I'm just saying, like, that's the craziness of a show like that, where it's like, I'm rich because I thought of something somebody already did slightly different. And you could be it's crazy. The world works so nuts.
I just like all the videos online where people edit the clips so it's like a child doing it and he's screaming at a kid and stuff.
Yeah.
It's also one of those weird things to me too, where I'm like, wasn't Mr. Wonderful gonna like just buy something? Wasn't he gonna buy TikTok? Wasn't like his thing? He was like, I'll buy TikTok and deregulate
Everybody
it.
was gonna buy TikTok at one point.
He's got the money to do it though.
Stupid. I don't. Yeah, the only one I know is like super rich is Cuban, and I don't know enough about the other 3.
Well, they're
Cubes.
all
No, I know
rich.
that,
Mark
but
Cuban's
yeah.
more of a public figure.
The thing is, I only know them other than Mark Cuban from Shark Tank. So they could they tell me they're rich, I believe them.
How did Ferg lose all his money in the stock market? Some guy told him he was rich and he believed him.
So after she says that, though, he goes, well, good luck finding a man that's okay with his wife making more money than him. Like, I don't need a man to feel complete. He's like, well, when you want to kill a spider, a man's going to look pretty darn good. She's like, I have a shoe. I kind of thought it was like, I don't know. I get like his character is that of like the old school dude and like the old morale. But like, for your granddaughter, you going like, hey, you don't want a good job and make more than your husband. And
Yeah, that's a weird thing to put down on her, but like, you should just be subservient.
I felt like he was just playing around with her because he just talked about the Barbie movie and crushing the patriarchy. And like, I think that's just their back and forth.
I thought the better joke, instead of going into the Shark Tank thing, would have been like, no, I want to be like Oppenheimer. I want to blow up whole countries, right? Because that would have been like the movie right after, right?
Also, I'll take a girl that makes more money than me in a second.
Yeah, I think that anybody who has that sort of hang up is a fucking idiot. Like, whoever makes the money makes the money. I would not
Give me that
mad.
sugar mama.
Yeah, I will take it all day long. I will do so many dishes. I'll keep this house so
I feel
clean.
less of a man because you make a steady income.
That's just a weird thing.
That really shows how fucking masculine you are to begin with. You make me feel a certain way.
You hurt my feelings about money I make in my job.
Next scene, we're back at the shop, which we see the exterior of it, so now we know it's called Parker Custom Cars, and the 4 of them are all walking in together. We're getting it. Yeah, this whole block's gentrified now. All the bars have mocktails, and she's like, "Yeah, they're not bad with a little bit of vodka in them."
I will say, I think it's an amazing thing that there's so many non-alcoholic beers out there, right? And there's people who can't drink anymore or want to drink less, and like that's an amazing thing, and I think it's great, and a lot of them taste like beer, and that's so good. But have you ever had you ever had fake bourbon? Oh my fucking god!
Ew.
Like no, just be like, you can drink soda or you can drink fake beer, like not or near beer or
Yeah,
whatever.
give me a diet Pepsi.
Well,
please.
no. I don't.
Yeah.
Mocktails aren't necessarily with fake booze in them, though.
Some are, but
Like a typical mocktail, I think, like if you were to go and order, you can get mocktails at bars.
Like a virgin pina colada.
Yeah, they're just gonna make the drink, virgin. It's gonna have everything, but
the liquor.
the booze in it, which I love. We made ginger and strawberry extract. Like you just like boil it with a little bit of sugar, and so like we bought regular soda waters and we kind of like mix and match like different flavors in them now, and I'm in love with the strawberry. But I could see those working in mocktails.
well, I feel if you're doing stuff like that, then you probably should get like a soda stream.
I almost got one, but the reviews on those are very down the middle.
I will say this.
Do you have one?
I had one years ago, and it was kind of a piece of shit. And then we moved, and I was like, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm just gonna buy cans of soda water. And then I heard people the new ones are way better. The new ones are way better, and I caved and bought a new one like a month ago.
Yeah,
and they're so much better now.
Okay, I mean, I'll definitely.
I've always been
consider it.
tempted. I drink a ton of seltzer. I think I'm cracking my 4th can since we've started recording.
That's insane.
I drink a lot of liquids, but I feel like if you're in the extract game now, if you're making
I
custom
know,
sodas,
yes.
then you might
Yeah.
as well.
And it's funny because I started looking. I went to Target to buy strawberries, and I was like, I'm gonna check out the Soda Stream, and it ended up just being me in the aisle for like 25 minutes on my phone, like watching videos. And like the main takeaway I got was, it does in no way save you money.
No,
it doesn't save you money, but it saves you waste and heaviness of having to carry so many 12 packs of soda water.
The
Yeah.
comment was like, you're not going to save any money. You're just not going to have to lug cases of seltzer water into your house anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, like, that's something to consider. And I don't know, Joe, have you looked into the attachments you can get to hook up larger CO2?
I have, because my ultimate dream is to, like, I don't even want a soda stream. I want like a bar set up with like a 5-foot tall CO2 tank.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I have looked into it. I will say though, I'm a little scared because I have gone a little too heavy on the soda stream before, and you're like, content's under pressure, and this thing's made of plastic, so it gets a little scary. So the idea of having like a fucking, scuba diver tank of CO2 like, makes me a little afraid sometimes.
And how long does the tank last? This is a conversation we can have offline too. Like, I am genuinely
we can move this
curious
offline.
about
I will say, especially the new ones, like it depends on how spicy you like your water. I like my water very spicy.
Yeah.
So the last one I get usually lasts me like a week.
Oh, that's it? Interesting.
But on like a weeknight when I'm not drinking, my main drink usually is like soda water and like I put like throw a lime in it. So I can drink like 5 or 6 of those in a night though. So I mean in a week.
Okay,
it's
so
a
you
good
do drink
amount.
a lot. So yeah. But I mean, like, I got a bunch of people. All right, I'm gonna have to look into this. This is Soda Stream. If you're looking for a way to sponsor, get me hooked up, and I'll promote you.
I will say this too: if you're gonna get one, spend the extra $10 now. They get the ones with the handle where you go like a slot machine. That's the way to go.
You win every time.
This is so riveting. We should talk about coffee now.
Guys, what do you think about mustard? We haven't talked about that in a while.
it has been a couple months since we have a good mustard talk. So anyways, yeah. So they're walking in, they're having that conversation. Georgia goes, "Oh my God," and runs over. She's like, "This is the Scrub Daddy. Lori from Shark Tank blew these up." He goes, "It's a sponge." Those are the ones with the face, right? The Scrub Daddy?
Yes. Yeah. And it's a giant one now.
And then this is, Joe probably hates this. This is when we get a little Instagram talk, because this is when the her son, I'm sorry, what's his name? Carter's like, "Oh, I recognize all this stuff from your Instagram account." And he's looking around and looking at some of the cars. And he's like, "Hey, explain this one." And he takes his phone out and he starts recording his grandfather. He's like, "All right." And he's talking about this like 70s muscle car. He's like, "This one was built for the studios." And kind of just doing like a whole little pitch about it. And I thought that was going to be like a continuous thing. Like that video was going to go towards like, "Hey, I posted that video of you and it blew up." Like, but it wasn't. He like cut this whole promo on the car and the kids filming it, and that went to nothing.
I honestly just think he wanted to make a joke. He had like the bullet car. Like that's a very iconic movie car, and I think they just wanted to like put it in there. I think as a car guy, he was like, "Get me the bullet car so we can make a joke about it."
No, that's fine, but I just thought the way that they put the scene together to have the grandson be like, "Hey, Pops, tell me about the car," and he's recording them, which I think is for Instagram or for TikTok or something, you know. I thought that was going to come back later in the episode, that the video blew up and now, you know, he gets business from it or something, but it just like there was no, that just kind of went into the air.
Maybe it comes back later.
I'm glad it didn't though, because like I said, there's like a scene in every episode of Last Man Standing where he does the video blog thing, and it shows that, where I feel like it would have felt like it was sort of treading on that.
If he decided doing like a weekly Instagram video, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe this was a nod at that.
That's a good point too. Yeah, it may have been like, remember my other show?
I feel like him working with cars, like the very first car you see, remind me of his hot rod from Home Improvement.
Yeah.
Now, like that was almost a nod, and now he's doing the vlog here, so maybe that's a nod.
He also makes a Santa Claus joke too at one point.
There's a couple cars that are in the garage, and I guess they're straight up from his last show. So, like the actual cars, which make me wonder, like, does he own them, or is it just because it's the ABC lot? Maybe they still just had them.
A little bit of both. Oh, sorry, no, he mentions Santa Claus in a different episode, but he like makes a joke like, "She thought I was the Santa Claus," sort of thing. So like, I think he definitely is self-referential, so that would make sense.
I do find it strange, the little I know about this character, that he'd have an Instagram at all.
Yes.
Yeah, it's for the business. Like, I'm sure it's like he's not the one who's in charge of the account,
Yeah.
but it's for the shop. So like almost every business kind of has to have one.
Like, it should be Stitch or Sean William Scott who runs that for him, and he begrudgingly is part of it. He shouldn't be like, "I have Instagram as an app downloaded on my phone." That does not make sense for his character.
The kids are looking at the car after he's explaining. He's like, "Well, do you guys want to go for a ride?" So he ends up taking them out. They ask Riley if she wants to come. She's like, "No, I need some." Like, basically, it was something about how like they need time with Papa and she needs time away from him, and you know, for them to go on their own. Then you cut to like the car, like just kind of pulling into a parking lot, and it's like, "Why are we here? Like, do you have to pee again?" And then it's really basically this was basically to set up like, yeah. But he also wants Carter to learn how to drive, and like this is the opportunity for like, hey, like enough's enough, like because he has like an Uber account and all this, and he's saying like basically his mom's promoting like him not even trying to learn how to drive.
I relate to this as somebody who learned how to drive last year.
Recently,
We're 38 years old, and how much I do enjoy driving now, and how freeing it is, and how like the fear of not doing it for so long built up that I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't do it forever because it became such a big thing in my head.
Yeah, it sucks that you didn't have people telling you for over 20 years to just do it.
Again, though, we have discussed this previously on the podcast. It's probably a better thing at certain points in my life that I did not.
Maybe at first, maybe when we're all those first few years were probably good that you weren't.
This might be a 2-man episode right now, or 3-man episode right now, if that had been the case. But I will say, I do wish I learned earlier. And
Nick, did you get yours right away? I remember Ferg, you waited till you were 18, right?
I was 18.
You were 18 as well?
Yeah.
I think Gordo was too, right?
I think
no,
think it
Gordo
should be
was
18.
early.
Gordo was
16.
Gordo was
Yeah.
16, lost it by 18. I think.
And Gordo had a car that I can't believe even that we still say putter about Gordo's car from 20 years ago.
It's funny. I hate driving, but I got my license like as soon as humanly possible. Like my 16th birthday, got my permit, like got my license as soon as humanly possible after that. I always wanted the freedom of being able to go places. But then when other people could drive, I would rather just not be the driver. But I to this day, I just like the freedom to leave when I want to leave.
So I kind of I used to do that. I prefer not driving, but then something happened in the past decade where I almost can't be a passenger in someone's car. It drives me nuts. Everything they do, I would do differently. Every route they take, I would take a different one. And I just sit there anxious and pissed off at the way we're doing things. I would just
stepping on the imaginary brake.
I just feel like you're literally talking about Jay's brother right now.
This part of the episode, we have another weird. Carter takes his phone out to record his grandfather. And we don't, I don't know. Again, the video doesn't really go anywhere. But he's telling him, let me tell you how the world works. And he gets, in Matt grabs his grandson's phone. He's like, listen, you screen addicted little freaks. And he's talking about, how you have to get out there and you have to work and parents don't make their kids do anything anymore. And, kids are getting soft and all this stuff. And it kind of was like, well, what's this video for? I just feel like, why do we keep recording him? Like, it's not being used.
This is what would have been one of the Tool Time monologues he gets into after the argument with Jill crescendos or something like that, or something with the kids happens, and then they're, installing Windows on Tool Time, and he goes, "You know what, Al?" And then he like steps forward towards the audience and has this exact monologue, right? It's just like it's such a Tim Allen thing to like get the point across.
And by the way, that's a stupid haircut, Tim. It's my favorite one of all of those.
I just feel with these scenes of him recording them, he's not extreme enough in that direction that he'd warrant recording him to be like, "Oh, look how crazy my grandfather is."
Yeah.
And the kids aren't the other way enough for him to warrant the reaction of him getting angry and yelling at the phone. So like both needed to up it a little for this to make sense, and it just didn't.
Yeah,
happen.
like the first time he's being recorded, at least it's to explain a car. This time it's just like, oh, Pops is gonna go on a big rant, and he's just basically saying, "You kids are all soft." It was like, oh, all right. Well, after that, George is like, "I want to drive." It's like, look, even your little sister wants to drive. She probably knows more about cars than you. It's like, yeah, there's the goey and the stoppy. Like, yeah, see?
I do love the goey and the stoppy, though. Like, to a point where I'm like, I might start saying that internally.
Yes, I will use that.
And we cut back to the shop real quick. You see Gabriel looking at Riley's car for her. I don't know what, like, I thought the car was fine. Now all of a sudden the car's not fine. It's in the shop. He's looking at it. She's going over. It's making a noise like, this was a terrible mistake. You're never going to get along with your dad.
Look, I like this show, and I give this show a lot of leeway, but this scene is fucking brutal.
He's like, oh, so it's the brake pads.
Well, I'll tell you my issue with this scene and the next scene is they didn't both have to exist. They have the same exact conversation with both employees.
Well, this here is, I think, the establishing,
will they, won't
there's
they?
going to be a will they, won't they between these two people.
The will they, won't they's fine, but each employee has the conversation with her, "Oh, we know your dad's an asshole, but he loves you." And it's like...
Yeah, but this one also is he picked the wrong girl conversation. So he does throw it. I think it should have been just this one, for sure.
Could have still had that conversation.
Yeah, but I feel like if the other guy said it, then it would seem like he was into her.
I wish he said that.
Well, not that, yeah. But I think you could have probably, the other one's Ed. I think you probably could have found another, like, scene for Ed that didn't have to be so mirroring, I guess.
Yeah. Like, this one definitely needed to happen because you established that he looks up to Tim Allen and he has a crush on her, and that's the will they, won't they. Ed's didn't need to happen at all.
I do find it weird, though, to be like, "I'm in love with you, and I think your dad is a god, and your brother's my best friend." Like, that's a weird...
Yeah, not quite said that way, but I mean, well, she gets on him for being like obsessed with her dad because he works for him and stuff. He's like, "Oh, you think he walks on water?" It's like, "I saw it with my own eyes." Basically, I think somehow, joke was somehow like he was walking on top of antifreeze or something, but he's like, he was definitely off the ground. He's like, "You got to admit, he was right about Jimmy." It's like, "Oh, you always hated Jimmy because he rode a motorcycle and got all the girls." He's like, "I don't care how many girls he got. He just got one he didn't deserve." He's like, "Shut up." Like, you shut up.
So now they've planted this.
They've planted the
this is
seed
planted.
right there.
I will say, though, like, plays to his charm, though, that "you shut up" is like such a charming, funny Sean William Scott thing to say.
Real quick, because I remember them advertising the show. I remember seeing it and being interested in watching it. I don't ever remember Seann William Scott being part of the advertising.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. And that would have been a selling point.
Yeah, right, exactly. And
I think he was actually cast later.
Well, I think this is also something where, we were just talking about him earlier. Seann William Scott was pretty big 25 years ago, but modern day, not as much. And he doesn't have the star power. You have the two stars being Tim Allen and Kat Dennings, who both garner more star power than he does. So yeah, I mean, they might have flashed to him in if there was any cutscenes or anything in a trailer, but ultimately they wanted to see that, these two are in the show.
I will say, though, this show is pretty much primarily, I feel like, pitched to our generation of people who grew up with Tim Allen and then are the same age as either people and like watched American Pie or whatever. Like, so I would have been like,
Sure.
throw him a bone because like that's going to get our generation to be like, oh, and he's in this too? Cool.
But in fairness, this could be bad memory on our parts because he
true,
might have
too.
very well been present in them.
We're going to go watch this after episode. It's going to be like, Sean William Scott is hilarious as.
But yeah, no, we get a lot of him here. I mean, so yes, essentially he's saying your ex-husband is a dick. He got a girl he didn't deserve, being you, which insinuates that he has a thing for her. We find out that, he loves her dad and he's best friends with her brother, who we don't know where he is in the world right now. So he's very tied to the family on all levels. And for whatever reason, apparently if he had this crush on her, never announced it until all these years later. But yeah, for sure there's going to be a will they, won't they, and there's going to be hurdles, and we're going to wait 2 to 3 seasons to see it happen. But, they'll probably kiss by the second season.
And then if they start dating, we'll get the tension between him and Tim Allen, because Tim Allen will be like, you can't date my daughter.
Or he starts standing up to him a little bit more, or
Yeah.
something like that. We cut back to the car. Now we see that Carter's going to be driving after saying he didn't want to. And you just see like the car kind of like jolting forward like a few inches at a time. This car, I assume, is this like a manual? Because I can't drive stick.
It seemed automatic to me. I didn't see them shifting gears or anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like that car would have
you
been.
didn't see them what?
Nice.
But that's just like the fear, right? Of like you don't know the pedals yet. I think that's anybody's first time driving. Like me a year ago.
I remember my first time driving, I had one foot on the brakes and one on the gas. And I thought
You
that's
still
just how you
drive
did
like
it.
that.
I don't have a foot on each anymore, all right? And that's
Ferg, I'm going to defend you because I feel like if you took somebody who didn't know anything about driving and you were like, here are 2 pedals, one starts, one goes and one stops, that your brain would think to put a foot on each pedal.
that's how you do go-karts.
For those of you listening who have never had the privilege of being in a car that Ferg's driving, he still, as he's approaching age 40, doesn't know that you can coast. He's either accelerating or braking at all times.
True, yeah.
There's never a point where he's just foot on neither.
You're not first, you're last, baby.
Yeah. We cut a little further, and then we see that Carter is having more success driving the car now. So it's working out. And now this is that other conversation that's coming up next when we go back to the shop. Riley's talking to Ed, and I feel like there is a difference. It's not necessarily a completely mirrored conversation in that really the point of the one with Gabriel is to find out that Gabriel and her are going to be a will they, won't they. This is like Ed kind of letting her know how hard it's been for him ever since her mom's died. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of thing that really is popping up. Like ever since she's passed, it's been really tough on him, and it's telling all of us because, he's different, and, he's even come to happy hour with us. He's like, my dad went to happy hour. What do you do for the other 59 minutes?
A lame joke.
It was a terrible joke. Can somebody explain that joke? So he was only happy for a minute?
Yeah. He'd only be happy at the bar for a minute.
Here's the thing. I'll say this. Instinct is to blame her because she tells every shitty joke in the episode. She didn't write the jokes. Unfortunately,
She might have. She's a producer on the show. Does she have a writing credit?
The creators and writers of this show wrote some of the greatest Simpsons episodes of all time, so it's sort of on them to be throwing some bad jokes out there, I think.
But somehow. I feel like, they're handing her so many fucking corny jokes. It's her characters just telling them at all times.
And are they always corny? If they were delivered with somebody with, I don't know, a less robotic presence?
I think that joke would have been bad no matter who said it.
That one.
I just think it's a bad joke, yeah.
It has to be delivered like, I don't know, maybe like a more dull sarcasm, like a little drier might work out, but...
Any kind of emotion whatsoever.
He keeps going on. He's like, you know what? I know he can be difficult, but deep down inside, who are we fooling? He's a pain in the ass. But he is happy that you're home. Right as they're having this conversation, we hear like tires screeching and this crash. She's like, what the hell? And runs out. And you see that like the car drove into, Carter's still driving. And he drove like the car into the garage entrance. And I don't know if it's supposed to look bad, but it doesn't look bad at all. But there's steam coming out.
By that noise, the screeching and the crash, I thought it was a head-on collision. Like, oh my God, is one of the kids dead? And then it's just, you get a little fender bender.
Well, it's like they didn't want to actually mess up this car, so they just drove it up to the wall. And there's like, it doesn't look like there's any damage, but it just adds steam. Steam will make it seem bad.
Do you think it was a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn? What do you think he's bad at?
Well, apparently he hit the go-y instead of the stoppy.
Well, that'll do it too.
So, but now he's all upset. So, he gets out of the car. I told you I didn't want to drive. And we flash forward to them walking into the house later on. And she's mad. Like, you forced him to drive. You couldn't respect his wishes. It's like he was having a great time out there. And she's saying how, well, you think you know what's best for him, but I'm the parent, not you. And it's tough, right? Like, I'll say this. I mean, I agree with, like, you need to push these kids a little bit and not be, like, overly soft with them when they don't want to do things. But also, it is her kid, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, like, I know it's his grandchild, but, like, you somewhat have to respect, your kids' wishes on how they want to parent their kids. So it's a tough conversation.
I don't feel as if he pushed him that hard to drive, though. I mean, he nudged him a little, gave him a little razzing, but
like he knew he doesn't have the same fighting spirit his mom has, and he knew that, like, his grandfather wasn't about to let this go.
But again, too, I think he's losing the point. Like, I don't know. I don't think any of us know because none of us are grandparents. But I've always assumed and, like, understood the role of a grandparent as, like, it's all the fun parts of being a parent and none of the stressful
but
parts.
No, I could just say from afar, like, watching, like, my own mom at times, like, talking to my brother. It's like there are times where, like, if they don't agree with the parental choice, like, they're not afraid to tell you sometimes. Frank, I'm sure you've probably had conversations with your mom where,
oh yeah,
it's like, and it's tough, like, not that they don't know, right? But it's like you already got to be a parent. Now it's the other person's turn. I mean, he has his points. Like, again, he's saying that, like, you're coddling these kids and you can't do that. And she's like, coddle? He's like, Carter has an Uber account. You're paying for him to not learn how to do something.
See, I disagree here, though, because, again, Nick, you said today you had to go to jury duty. You drive all the time. You took an Uber. Like, there's nothing wrong with also Ubering places.
Well, no, he's not. I don't think he's anti.
Yeah, but that was his primary way of getting around. It wasn't. Nick did it because of his situation today.
Sure, but I also don't.
I was drunk.
Nick was going drunk to jury duty. To be fair, the only way to do
it's a
jury
good
duty.
way to get out of being a jury.
Yeah, they'll be like, get the fuck out of here.
And the reason we should take you, I'm fucking ripped, dude. Like, if you want to take me, go ahead.
The beauty of that, too, is you can just get drunk in the back of the Uber the whole way there. You just, like, can't let it ride. But I also feel like in this situation, too, the dad left. They don't have a ton of money. They're coming back here. That car maybe isn't the most reliable. Like, she doesn't want him driving that, too. That becomes a situation, too, right? Where, like, if you don't have a thing you feel safe with them driving in, it's probably also an issue.
Yeah, but you know what? Also, you just moved into your dad's house and you don't have a job. Maybe you shouldn't have your fucking kid Uber everywhere because that's going to cost you fucking hundreds and hundreds of dollars that you don't have at the moment.
Uber's not cheap, so yeah.
Thinking about it, the cost is really the only problem I would have with it. Because other than that, who gives a fuck? Right?
I agree.
Like, you got to go somewhere, take an Uber. Like, whatever. Who cares? Like, you're getting just chauffeured around everywhere. It's probably safer. Listen, if I had a 16-year-old kid and the option was, do I want this child to drive themselves somewhere or would I rather them take an Uber? I'm going to pick Uber every time. I can't believe, by the way, that the driving age is 16 still. Like, that blows
Seems
my
a little
mind.
low. Yeah.
16 is so young. It's insane to put a 4,000-pound, 100-mile-an-hour weapon behind the, you know what I mean? Like, it's just.
Well, I mean, they're entering the workforce before that. I mean, there's a point where, like, if you want them to work.
Yeah. But I don't know. I have I would have reservations for sure. I can kind of see it.
It certainly adds up.
Yeah, I mean, Uber is
discussing.
But yeah, this whole conversation keeps evolving between, her and her father. And it's like, you're pushing people to do things they don't want to do. And, like, this is the same thing with the whole lawyer thing. This is what you want someone to do. So, you keep pushing. He's saying you push kids in a direction to encourage what they're doing. He's like, please, you never gave a damn about what I wanted. The conversation's, it's heating up. Like, it was always your way or the highway. So I picked the highway. He goes, well, look where that took you, right back here.
See, now I thought that was a good joke.
Yeah.
It's a good point, too.
I mean, there is something to say for her. I mean, yeah, it's like, she was obviously the rebellious one, but yeah, she was also like, crying on the couch the night before about how she, where am I going with my life?
That's what I'm saying. So, okay. So this is what I don't understand. She is arguing that he did things the wrong way with her, like bringing her up, raising her, and that she had plans of her own. She didn't want to be a lawyer. She didn't want to do this. So she went and she did everything that she wanted to do instead. And what happened? Like there's no redemption to her choices. This is him being totally right and her
Aside
being
from the
completely
grandkids.
wrong.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Them both being wrong doesn't make him right.
They were you can't say he was wrong.
But maybe we need to see an example of him messing up something more.
Right.
Unless the car crash was supposed to be that, but it wasn't like enough almost. Like you expect kids learning how to drive to potentially get in accidents and stuff like that.
And again, she still has the kids too, which is good.
Yeah. So maybe it's like, maybe that's the one thing that she thinks she has a good handle on in life is like that she's a good parent. So maybe she doesn't want all her decisions as a parent being questioned.
Yeah.
Also, he didn't have any other cars in the shop that were good to teach him how to drive in. He was like, why don't we go in this super expensive, super rare 60s Mustang?
Her car was right there.
But even her car was like is like that. Though like her car is like a restored car, so
Sure, but with nothing done to it in 15 years and a whole heck of a lot of miles put on it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you just don't go like, we've been working on this one. My shop fixes these cars. We spend thousands of dollars doing it. Do you want to try this car? Like, they don't have something in the back they're working on?
I guess, though, if that's your job and you own a shop, that's no biggie. It's like you bring it in, you fix it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
this argument's heading towards the kitchen from the living room. They're still just arguing. She's saying that he's selfish, and he's going, "You're selfish." And then he was saying how, like, your mom's funeral, you stayed at a motel. You didn't even stay here. How do you think that made me feel? It's like, James didn't want to stay here with you. He's like, who cares what the bass player wanted?
I like that he called him the bass player. Right
Yeah,
there.
I love that they still harp on the bass player thing all the way through the episode.
And then she's saying, well, I didn't really want to stay here either. And like, I was too broken over mom and, to keep the peace. And mom made the relationship between you and I possible. And she was the bridge. And now she's saying that it was a mistake coming here. Now, during this argument, we see cuts to Carter sitting on the steps listening to this whole thing. When she finally says this, that coming here was a mistake, he finally runs out and he's like, no, it wasn't like the car thing isn't Pop's fault. It was my fault. Like he wants to stay here. So he reveals that, his whole reason for being afraid of driving is that one night he actually took his mom's car and accidentally knocked down a fence and it freaked him out and he hasn't wanted to drive ever since. And he's like, that was you? I thought it was that kid across the street. I slashed his tires on his dirt bike.
She actually made me laugh at this part.
Yeah, this was fun. This felt like very much like a Roseanne reaction to, you know what I mean? Like, go across the street to some teenager's dirt bike and slash his fucking tires. Also, this kid just doesn't seem like he has I don't want to call it gumption, but like, he doesn't seem like a guy who'd steal a car.
Kids are curious and like want to try, like maybe he was just going to drive around, the parking lot or, whatever it was. But she's like, I need a moment to cool down. And she's like, and you're grounded. So no hanging out with your friends. And he goes, we just moved here. I don't have any friends, which I thought was probably one of my favorite lines in the episode.
It's not much of a threat at that point.
That's a rookie move. You don't point that out. You just go, oh, man, and leave.
Yeah. Oh, shucks. I guess I'll just sit in my room. It flashes to like later in the night and Matt's on the couch with his grandkids and they're all playing like video games together. And like, kill the old lady, Papa. Like, why do I want to kill that lady? She's the drug lord you've been hired to take out.
We're guessing this is like a Grand Theft Auto scenario.
Something like that. Whatever he did was apparently super gruesome because like I think he like took her head off because they're all like, ugh.
I think he says, I blew her off the Golden Gate Bridge.
He's like, you guys scare me. And he gets up and heads into the kitchen where Riley's just been like standing and hanging out. And he's like, is it weird to say I love killing as a family? And this is actually like I wasn't expecting this hard of a emotional scene to pop out of nowhere.
This part made me cry.
Yeah, this threw me and I felt for every second of it.
This one hit me. And this is going to sound fucking crazy. I think this scene here is Tim Allen's best dramatic acting in anything I've ever seen.
Legit.
He definitely doesn't cross that line very often.
No, he doesn't.
yeah.
But
I
here
didn't think
was
he
like,
had the
Jesus.
ability to make me tear up, and he did it.
Because she's going, hey, I found mom's flour sifter. And it's like, it's still covered in flour. It's almost like she's going to walk in here any minute and start making her apple cider cake. And he just starts getting choked up. And he's like, I never use it. I'm not going to wash it. And she's like, oh, well, I'm glad you didn't. And this is like also.
You're not going to wash it like hits like a fucking ton of bricks, man.
Yeah. It's just those, it's like deleting someone's number out of your phone after, you know what I mean? There's just like those little things you can't.
Dan not sleeping in the bed with Roseanne.
Yeah,
after
exactly
she died.
like that. And this is also, you remember, like, they haven't talked. So, like, even when she died, these two haven't been in communication really. So he's telling her basically, like, her mom's last day for the first time, and saying, like, we used the sifter like that morning, and she made those biscuits. She was going to go for a run, and he's like choking up trying to tell her. And he's like, and then 2 hours later, her heart stopped. And then your beautiful mother and the love of my life was gone. And I'm like, oh man, like, it's like, even like thinking about it to tell it right now, it's like, it's getting me like just thinking like it was so real in that moment.
And it's a character you've never seen.
Yeah. And she gives him a hug, and it was a really good scene. It was super well acted, and it bonded those two characters too in a way that like needed to happen. She apologizes for not being there for him, and he's like so emotional. He like when you're at that point and like you don't want to cry, so you keep it short. So he's just going, yeah. And he's just like, he can't say anything at this point. Just how different it's been being alone. And he's like, I think that's why I watch the news in the morning, so I can hear a woman's voice, even though sometimes it's Nancy Pelosi. And she goes, ugh, it's so annoying how she's trying to save democracy.
I will say this, though, and not to get political, it is funny that I don't think he would have seen this when they wrote this episode, that, like, both sides hate Nancy Pelosi. Like, that was one of those things where it's like, nobody's a big fan of her at this point.
It was like, I thought that was like a good, the timing was good to cut like a little joke in at that point. It needed a little bit of levity there, but without it being like too, some shows like have an emotional scene and they need to get out with a joke, but they go like too yuck. And it's like, for all the corny jokes that have been in this episode, like that was a nice, like just enough to cut the tension.
I mean, Full House is one of, I think, the greatest sitcoms of all time, and they would always do that. And it was always made even worse too by the swelling music. And to do like a nyuk or like a word right after, you're like, you just fucking killed this weird scene. The music hurt it a lot, yeah.
Now they're kind of talking like maybe we could build our own bridge. And he's like, yeah, and then, maybe sometimes if I want something with your kids that you don't, you just, look up at the roof over the head and go, okay. I don't think you know how bridges work, but you're the grandfather and you do deserve a little bit of leeway. So they're compromising and they're being more of a team for the first time. She's like, plus Carter needs to learn how to drive and I'm not going to get in a car with him. He sucks.
I love the immediate agreement. It's like, he sucks. Like, yeah, he's terrible. Like, he's not even like, we can teach him. It's like, oh yeah, he's fucking terrible.
Cuts to him crying on the stairs again.
You can hear it. I suck. I'm terrible. And I have no friends. I was kicked off the Mighty Ducks.
And we get like that last scene. It cuts to like dinner time, and Matt's like bringing some food out, and the kids are setting the table. And she's like, "My kid's setting up the table." He's like, "Yeah, I'm teaching them manners. It's a lost art, like so many other things, like tennis." And he goes on a rant about like what a great sport tennis is, and
I was like, "Man, Nick is furious right now."
Now people can't handle it, so now they just do pickleball, so old people can feel like they're athletes. So, Nick, would you like to defend pickleball?
Yeah, because anybody who's ever actually played pickleball knows you couldn't hold a drink while playing it. That is
like glass of Chianti, I think he says, right?
Yeah. No, pickleball is fucking great. It's not. I mean, it's a workout. I've never played tennis. So I can't really speak on the comparisons aside from what I could imagine the differences are.
Didn't we used to play down Ingleside?
Yeah, we've played tennis.
Okay, we've played tennis.
Not competitive, like we didn't play Venus and
I
Serena.
feel like a bunch of idiots playing tennis is not playing tennis, yeah.
I've swung a tennis racket before, yeah. But like competitively on like a, professional level, I don't know. Not that I'm a professional pickleball player either, but I don't know. I don't know why shade needed to be thrown on the pickle,
Same reason shade needed to be thrown at bass players. They just want to take shots at this podcast.
Yeah. The low-hanging fruit.
Can I ask, why is it called pickleball?
So it's just such like it's like an old, rich, white sport. It was, someone's going to correct me on this, but when you have a rowing team, like crew,
yeah,
there's like extra members, right? And they like not the main people, but the people who get put in the other boat. That boat is called the Pickle for some reason. And then that somehow translated into this ping pong tennis variation of a game into pickleball. And I don't really know what the correlation is. Somebody maybe knows better than I would, and they can correct us. But it's like it's not in any way. It doesn't make sense at all.
Doesn't connect to pickles. There's also like a pickle in baseball too, right? When you're like,
that's when you're stuck between.
When you're trapped
two
between
bases,
two bases, yeah.
Also, I think a great joke here to really hammer home how dumb the kid is when Tim Allen's like, forks go on your right, and he puts it down. He's like, that's not your right, and that's not a fork. That's just fucking great line.
I do remember laughing at that one.
Why does this kid not know what a fork is, or his left or right? He's 16 years old. I don't know why that's so funny.
When he's done ranting about pickleball, she walks up. She's like, "Oh well, thanks for that TED talk that no one's asked for." And then goes, "Hey, I made Mom's biscuits," and he's like, "She'd be very proud of you." And he passes the biscuits around, and then the kids start biting them, and it's like, "Oh, it's so dry." And the other kid's like, "I can't breathe." And then he's going, "Well, it is soaking up a lot of butter." And he just looks and goes, "I don't think you should do this again." That's how the episode ends.
Yeah.
That's how the episode ends. I fucking love it.
I thought that was great. It was like, it's supposed to be like this touching, like, hey, like I made Mom's biscuits and she just fucked them up royally.
It was a good button, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, baking is super hard. Cooking is hard. But baking is harder.
But I've never been much of a baking fan.
Me and my girlfriend have discussed this because she's a pretty decent cook and struggles to bake. And the main difference is eyeballing versus needing exact measurements.
Yeah.
You
baking
can eyeball when you're cooking
math.
dinner, right? Yeah. But you can't be off on a ratio.
Baking is science,
otherwise
yeah.
It's all fucked up. Yeah. It's chemistry, yeah.
My wife baked professionally for a number of years, and the amount of things in my house that measure shit that I'm like, I don't know where any of these go. I think I own 75 spoons of varying different measures and materials, and I just I could never do it. She's great at it, but it's confusing to me, and it's very specific.
Just buy a box of cake mix or biscuit mix. You don't need.
It's funny if you see the King Arthur ones too, where it's crack an egg and bake this. It's just a cookie, and you're like, that seems simple. It's you look at a recipe to make chocolate chip cookies from scratch, and you're like, holy shit, it's a lot of work.
Imagine going from baking professionally to ending up with someone where you can't make most of the things you learned how to make. What a wasted skill.
No, I like to think it's a professional challenge. She had to figure out how to make all that same stuff, but so
now
me.
her life is Chopped. Now she has to just figure out alternate ways to make things.
Yeah, Joe, I made you this tray of ice cubes.
Ooh,
delicious. I didn't know these were in season.
But yeah, no. So that was the final joke of the episode, which I did think was a good way around it. Yeah, that's it. That's a whole episode. There's not a lot on the show yet. It's so new. At the time of our recording, the 4th episode had just come out. I haven't seen it yet. I've watched the first 3 personally. So yeah, there's not much to say. It's a new show. You're kind of. I feel like a lot of these newer sitcoms that have been coming out lately, it looks like there's a slight resurgence in sitcoms, but they're all based kind of around here's some familiar faces that we threw together. It's kind of the TV Land style. All these newer shows I can think of lately that we've talked about covering or that are just out in general, all are return. Reba's back, and St. Dennis Medical has all people the Girl from the Goldbergs and stuff so it's a lot of that. It's not a lot of these we just did The Office not long ago where it was almost all unfamiliar faces at the time.
I gotta tell you, I'm a little nervous about Reba's new show getting a season 2 because they just moved that show to a Saturday, and that's usually the signal that it's not getting the season 2.
But she's a survivor.
Is that still a thing though with streaming?
I mean, they still need to have something on Fridays, I guess, but Friday's also a dead zone spot.
Yeah, I don't. I doubt it has as much of an impact nowadays.
But yeah, no. So I mean, we'll see where this show goes past this. I was kind of. We'll get into our green light and cancel in a minute. But I will say, to go back to the beginning of the episode when I was going over a few things, I was a little surprised that right now the Rotten Tomato and IMDb scores are all kind of hovering in like the low 60s. I thought it would be a little bit more well received than it is early on. But with that in mind, unless anything you guys want to add, we can get into the green light and cancels. Well, Gordo's not here again, so you'll be able to catch up with his score when we post it on our social medias, which is on S1E1 Pod on Instagram, X, just about anything else. So check that out there, but we'll get into it now. Berg, starting with you.
Yeah, it's going to be a green light for me. The show's got a few holes. It's not perfect, but I enjoyed it. Made me cry, so I felt emotion, you know. But I thought it was funny. I love Tim Allen. I think the cast is great all around. All the supporting characters are pretty good, minus Kat Dennings. Yeah, I truly enjoyed it, and when we're done, I'm going to go watch the other 3 episodes. So, yeah, green light.
Joe.
It's a green light for me too. I'm like you, Jay. I have seen every episode up to date so far. When I heard this was coming out, I'm just a huge Tim Allen fan. I was so excited anyway. I agree. I did not expect the emotional turn of this. I think this is his most emotional work since he gave the cruise tickets to Art and his wife at the end of Christmas with the Cranks, which is a fairly emotional scene. He even agrees to take the mean cat, and that's a beautiful thing. I want to take this down a notch for all those bass players out there, but I really did enjoy this. There's some holes, obviously, and some shit that doesn't make sense, but the odd couple variation will always work if you get the right people to do it, and I think this works. And I agree. I think it's probably, this should be like in the 70s, not the 60s, but we'll see what happens. We'll see if there's a second season, but for me, I would greenlight it for sure.
Nick.
I just realized I did not watch Christmas with the Cranks this Christmas, by the way. I didn't really think about that, but I did not watch it.
I watched it twice, so we can just count one for you.
Okay, all right, that works. I have expressed my distaste for Kat Dennings multiple times throughout this episode. However, I'm not going to pull a Gordo and let one singular thing ruin how I feel about the show, because I agree with you guys. I think the casting on this show is fantastic. The kids are great. Tim Allen speaks for himself. Seann William Scott, I can see having a much larger role, a much better role. And there's just the story, like, it's not, I don't know, the dead mom sitcom. Like, how many of them do we need, really? Like, it just seems like, it seems lazy.
How did none of us say that's Mama's flower sister?
I was so
mad.
We all thought.
I was trying to think earlier of like, that's Mama's car or something like that, but
we really botched that one.
Yeah,
nothing
the flower
good enough
sifter
came up. Yeah,
Ferg and I
ashamed of us.
figured that out at the exact same time, and our eyes lit right up.
But yeah, I mean, again, it's like, do we need another one of these sitcoms? And Tim Allen works really well with a good, spousal counterpart to act against, right? And they're trying to make Kat Dennings that, his daughter instead of his wife, right? But it doesn't work for a couple reasons. One being that Kat Dennings is the most boring actor I've ever watched. But regardless, I am going to give it the green light because I just think that Tim Allen has a way with these shows, and the rest of the cast supports that, and it's just gonna I want it to do well, so that's why I'm greenlighting it. In this episode, there's nothing awful about this episode either. It's just Kat Dennings that I can't stand, and I know she's gonna stick around. Obviously, she's one of the main characters, but maybe I'll come around on her, maybe not. But either way, I can't hold her totally responsible and then cancel it because it's not the case. So it's a green light for me.
So first off, Kat, I apologize for everything Nick said. I don't want this to affect our relationship. With that in mind, no, listen, yeah. So I think the show has some holes. I think Kat Dennings' character was given a ton of really shitty jokes, which isn't great. But I think overall, the show and the dynamic between her and him, I think is a good fit. I think she is a strong enough character to kind of go against him. And I enjoyed it. I just think that this is a classic sitcom and feels like a classic sitcom where a lot of these newer ones don't always have that vibe. And I just, as we have done so many of these episodes, like I love a classic multicam, and there are so few decent ones that are out these days. And this feels refreshing and like, something I could see myself watching as long as it exists. And yeah, I liked it. It had enough for me. So I'm giving it the green light as well. With that in mind, congratulations to Shifting Gears. You have 4 out of 5 already out of 4. So regardless of Gordo's vote, you are getting the green light. So I want to thank everyone who listened. S1E1pod.com. I say it every week. That is where you can go and find all our social medias. Please give us follows there, message us, let us know shows you want to cover. How you found us in general. Just good to chat with you guys. Also, leave reviews because that helps. That helps other people find us. We don't get a lot of them. They're tough to get out of people, but if you could leave us a review, that would mean a lot. Just be kind with it and
tell your friends.
Hopefully we'll fall into some algorithms. Yeah, tell your friends, do all that stuff. But I don't want to keep you guys for that much longer, so thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you again next week with another new episode. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best emotional flower sifter.